Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Happy Wednesday 7:30, or no, it won't be 7:30 if you're watching elsewhere, and it might not even be Wednesday when you find this video, so hey, hi, whatever day it is. Today I'm back with another true crime and makeup episode. Today we are covering an absolute stinker of a case. We're covering the case of William Bonin. He's evil. Knievel. He's just a horrible, horrific man, and he's actually deemed the ugly killer. And like, I can see why. Can you? Because like, it's giving fell off the ugly tree, hit every branch on the way down. William Bonin was a sadistic, evil murderer, rapist, someone who enjoyed hearing his victims endure the torture that he was putting upon them. He targeted young boys. Most of these boys were hitchhikers, schoolboys, or young men who were involved in sex work. He would abduct, bound, torture, rape, and strangle these young boys to death. It is so important that we cover cases like this so we can remember these poor victims who lost their lives at the hands of this sadistic murderer. Not only was William Bonin himself a horrific sadistic serial killer, somehow he had 4 accomplices who all shared the same interests as him. William Bonin is best known as the Freeway Killer, who took 21 victims in just 1 year, and we're going to cover that today. Before I get into the case, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Get the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload every Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 British Standard Time. All the details that you need are all down below, from products, social media handles, email, if you want to send over case suggestions, or you can leave them in the comments below. I think when I upload this, I should have hit 10k. 10k, like such a small milestone for some, but such a huge one for me. I'm like so proud of myself. But thank you all so much for supporting and watching my content and sharing my content. It means the world to me, and I only hope it continues to grow. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the horrific case of William Bonin. So, William George Bonin, he was born on January the 8th, 1947 in Willimantic, Connecticut. He was the second of 3 sons to Robert Leonard Bonin Sr. and also Alice Dorothy Cope. Now, sadly for the 3 children, both parents, so both Alice and Robert, were alcoholics, and Robert was a World War II veteran who became physically and mentally abusive to his wife and also his sons. Now, his mother, who, as I said, also an alcoholic, she would frequent a bingo parlour, so she would leave the children unattended quite a lot, like when they're very, very young, and she's also thought to have been very emasculating to all of the men in her life, but especially William Bonin. Now, in January of 1950, Robert Bonin, he was a compulsive gambler. Like, he was gambling constantly, and it got so severe in January of 1950 when he gambled away the home of the Bonins. Now, this was their home in Andover, so they completely lost this, and this meant that they wound up having to reside with the maternal grandparents over in Willimantic. These grandparents, very problematic in Willimantic. Now, despite being raised in a very, very dysfunctional environment, William and his brothers, they were raised Catholic and they attended St Mary's Catholic School. Now, sounds all sunshine and roses, but the school had a lot of complaints regarding William Bonin. He was aggressive toward students and teachers. He always committed truancy, which in Scotland we actually call that dogging. And I know dogging has other meanings, right? But when you're in school, you'd be dogging school if you weren't going to your classes. Not the sex in a vehicle that people watch, dogging, just like not going to your classes. That's what truancy was here in Scotland. I don't know if they still call it dogging class, but That's what we called it. But also other forms of misbehaviour that William was exhibiting was really troubling at school for his teachers and his fellow students, fellow peers. Now, William Bonin, at one point, he did spend some time in juvie hall because he had ran his bike into a group of young girls, like trying to injure them. And when he returned home from juvie hall, his behaviour toward his parents was worse than ever. Like, outrageously bad. In September of 1953, William Bonin and his older brother Robert Bonin, they were placed in the Franco-American school, which is like a Catholic convent. Now, the teachers at this Catholic convent, they believed in the harshest of discipline. Like, outrageous discipline. And if the boys had misbehaved, they would make the boys punch fences until their knuckles bleed. Like, terrible. Now, it is reported that Bonin was very badly abused and bullied whilst in this Catholic convent, and there's actually one occasion where he was taken into the bathroom by another one of the young boys, and Bonin himself had requested that this other young boy bound his hands with a towel. So the boy did this, and then he sexually assaulted Bonin in this bathroom. Now, whilst Bonin was in this convent, his parents never ever came to visit him, and it actually got to the point where he believed that his parents had died. Like, they had no contact with Bonin whatsoever, to the point that he believes they're dead, which is just horrible for any child to go through, and I can absolutely show sympathy to Bonin at this point, because the upbringing does not sound easy, but this will never ever excuse what he goes on to do. And then in May of 1955, Bonin is notified that his parents are not in fact dead, they are just deadbeats. But he returned to living with his parents and his grandfather when he left to go home. Now, right up until Bonin's first incarceration, he was staying with his grandfather and his siblings. Now, this grandfather is a known sexual abuser and sexual predator, right? This is Bonin's mum's dad. Now, he abused Bonin's mother when she was a child, and now she is putting her children in the care of a sexual predator who sexually abused her and allowing this cycle to continue. The boys, especially William Bonin, they were being sexually abused by this grandfather, and it's just so disgusting to think the cycle going from generation to generation, and she should know better. And then in 1957, William Bonin was placed in a juvenile detention centre for multiple petty theft crimes that he had committed. And Bonin said that during his time being incarcerated here, he was frequently being abused sexually by one of the counsellors. Where do we actually find these monsters that, in a Catholic convent is wanting to beat up the children basically, and then in a juvenile detention centre where they're trying to rehabilitate and put these children on the right path, they've got sexual abusers. Now, very shortly after William Bonin was released from the juvenile detention centre, when he had went home, he sexually abused his younger brother Paul. He was fondling Paul, and Paul was brave enough to confide in their mother about what William had done to him. Now, as punishment and to keep Paul safe, Alice decides, William, you're going to sleep in a separate room so you can't hurt your younger brother. Let me just get this right. So William sexually abuses your younger son Paul, and the punishment and the way that you're going to keep Paul safe is by making William sleep in a separate bedroom. Right. Okay, Mother of the Year. Now, at a later point, Bonin would confess to molesting young boys. He even said that he had exposed himself to a 10-year-old girl at one point, and also he tried to engage in incestuous acts with one of his female cousins. Yeah, don't invite him to the family party. Now, it is stated that throughout William Bonin's time in middle school, he really applied himself to math and science. He really seemed to excel in those areas, but in every single other area and subject, he would get very mediocre grades. To do well in math and science, they're They're like the biggies, you know? Or at least in my opinion. I was never good at math or science, and I was always jealous of those who were, because I think you're like super smart if you get all of that. Now, in the late 1960s, the Bonin family, they faced foreclosure, right? So they are stressed to the high heavens, and this resulted in Bonin's mother kicking their father out of the house. She wanted nothing to do with him, and ultimately she won full custody of the children. However, Robert Bonin, he goes on to seek employment in a job that offers a very, very attractive salary, and he got it. Now, the minute Alice hears about this very attractive salary, she suddenly, desperately realises her love for Robert Bonin and wants to reconcile immediately. Now, in the words of Mr. Kanye West, I ain't saying she a gold digger, right? But if the shoe fits, that's all I'm saying. Now, Bonin went on to attend a high school in Torrance, which is where the family had wound up buying a house. Now, in high school, he was not popular. He wasn't popular at all. He was actually deemed like a social outcast. He was really awkward in social settings, and he wasn't really able to make any friends. Now, by the time that William Bonin was a teenager, he had a very strong and intense desire for young children. Now, his mother realised this right away. She was very aware of his interests. Now, this caused a lot of tension and a lot of arguments in the household, obviously, because you've just realised your son's a paedophile. But yet again, she doesn't report Bonin to the police, or she doesn't try and get him any help. But what William Bonin does is to get his mother off his back, because like, she's ruining his hobby. To get his mother off his back, he decides to date a girl by the name of Linda, and this was solely to make his mother happy. He didn't want to, but he did it for her. Now listen, some people finish high school, right? They do the whole thing, they finish it. Other people, they drop out and they attend college, or some people will drop out and go straight into work, you know, or some will even drop out, take a gap year, travel, then come back, go to college and work, whatever, right? But it's not often that someone drops out of high school to molest the neighbourhood children. But this is what William Bonin done. And his mum was aware, but turning a blind eye to what was going on. And what she would do is, in her spare time, she would pray for Bonin. Yeah. Not reporting him to the police, not trying to keep the neighbourhood children safe. Yet again, turning a blind eye and not reporting someone who is quite clearly committing monstrous acts against children, or against anyone for that matter. It's annoying me. It's really starting to steam my clams, right? Now, I'm guessing that Alice had got fed up of the child molester living in her house. So, yet again, instead of calling the police, she just evicts him from the house. So William Bonin, he ends up going on to join the US Air Force in 1966. Now, with the help of some encouragement from his mother, Bonin decided to get engaged to Linda. It's not what he wanted, but it's what his mother wanted, right? So she had actually thought that if he got engaged to Linda, this would cure his paedophilia. Yeah, because that's the oldest cure trick in the book for paedophilia. Sure. Anyway, so during that engagement to Linda, he confided in Linda about this reoccurring nightmare that he was having, and it was about the sexual assault and the murder of a young woman. Now, Bonin, he had actually served 3 years in the US Air Force before receiving an honourable discharge. And when I seen honourable discharge, I was shook. I was like, surely not. I do not believe a man like him could be honourably discharged. But he did later confess that he had actually sexually assaulted 2 soldiers under his command whilst at gunpoint. But because this was unknown to his overheads, he was honourably discharged. Now, when Bonin had returned home from the Air Force, he found out that Linda, who had just recently given birth to their son, had actually left him for another man. Like, this just caused him to spiral, but honestly, like, well done, Linda. So William Bonin, he moves back to Downey and he lives with his parents, and when he returns home, the family have noticed very worrying changes in Bonin's behaviour. Now, they thought it was maybe something to do with him being in the military and having a hard time experiencing things that the average person doesn't, but he didn't say it was anything to do with this. But he also wouldn't confirm why he felt the way he felt. Now, on November the 16th, 1968, Bonin was driving his mother's car when he offered 14-year-old Billy Jones a lift home. Now, Billy really appreciated this. He gladly accepted the offer of this lift home. However, he started to get a very, very uneasy feeling when William Bonin bombarded him with a bunch of questions. Most of these questions were in relation to homosexuality, if he had ever had a homosexual experience, if he had ever thought about it, if he would ever be up for it. Now, Billy at this point, 14 years old, bear in mind, okay, let's bear that in mind, 14-year-old, Billy, he is getting very scared, very uneasy, and so he attempts to flee the vehicle. Now, devastatingly, Billy was unable to escape the vehicle, and Bonin had drove him to a nearby shopping centre where he proceeded to handcuff and brutally rape 14-year-old Billy. Now, he knocked Billy unconscious in the process of raping him, and after he was finished with Billy, he dropped him off at the park, and Billy ran home and immediately told his mum what had happened, and she had reported this incident to the police. Now, on November the 26th, Bonin had picked up a 17-year-old hitchhiker, John Treadwell, in Torrance, and Bonin, yet again, started asking questions about homosexuality, and he actually referred to gay men as the F word, which I am not going to say because it's so bloody disrespectful, but I'm sure we all know what that word is. After asking these outrageous questions to young John, he put the foot down and sped away in the vehicle whilst pointing a handgun at young John's head. Then he took young John to a secluded area where he bludgeoned him with a tire iron and proceeded to rape him. Bonin had threatened John with violence. He said that if John confided in anyone or reported him for what he had done, that he had friends that would happily get revenge on John, so they would kill him if he reported or confided in anyone. Then on December the 4th, 17-year-old Alan Pruitt, he had actually reported to the police a man with long hair and, well, medium to long hair and an olive complexion. He said that this guy had offered him a lift and then took him to a secluded area where he proceeded to rape him inside the vehicle. Then on January the 1st, 1969, William Bonin had offered 12-year-old Lawrence Bretman in Hermosa Beach a lift home. The boy accepted the lift from Bonin. He was very grateful, but he would soon regret his decision, just like every other young boy who got in Bonin's vehicle. Now, Lawrence, he began begging and pleading with Bonin to please let him go, and he wouldn't tell anyone. Bonin then proceeded to pull over and force Lawrence to perform oral sex on him. He then molested and robbed 12-year-old Lawrence and threatened to kill him if he ever found out that Lawrence had reported him to the police. And then on January the 12th, Bonin had offered 18-year-old Jesus Monge $20 if he would perform oral sex on him. Now, when Monge attempted to exit the vehicle, Bonin did what he always did. He physically assaulted and then brutally sexually assaulted young Jesus Monge. And if that wasn't bad enough, he then proceeded to handcuff and rape the young man. He also threatened Jesus when he was trying to fight Bonin off, and he said that, "I'll rip your nuts off if you don't cool it." How is someone meant to cool it when you're raping them? This monster, I hope he rots in hell. Now, of course, at this point, there is a lot of similar reports coming in from young men regarding this man who is abducting and raping them. So the police, they start to conduct a very extensive search for what they believe to be a a rapist in the local area. Now, on January the 28th, Bonin was actually caught in the act when a policewoman found him with what seemed to be a terrified 16-year-old Timothy Wilson. Now, because Bonin was acting so erratic and shady, the policewoman decided to search his vehicle and arrest him. Now, Bonin had told the policewoman to lock him up before then telling her that he was not responsible for any actions that he committed. Of course not. Then who was? So he was then indicted on 5 counts of kidnapping, 4 counts of sodomy, 1 count of oral copulation, and also another count of child molestation against 5 separate individuals. Now, after undergoing 2 psychiatric assessments, it was determined that William Bonin was a sexual psychopath with very little to no control over his actions. He also had depression and an inappropriate emotional response. Now, at first, whilst he was there, Bonin had claimed that he had never experienced any child sexual abuse when he was younger. However, he did later confess that he had been sexually abused at the age of 8, and it was also suspected that he would have been molested between the ages of 9 and 12 as well. So from 8 years old to 12 years old, they believe that there was around 4 years of child molestation. Now, Bonin was evaluated, which concluded that he was seriously lacking any insight and responsibility into the crimes that he had committed. Now, he did plead guilty to molestation and also oral copulation, and he was sentenced to Atascadero. Atascadero has housed some of the worst people. The one that always pops to my mind, Edmund Kemper. Now, in Atascadero, he was considered to be a mentally disordered sexual offender who would be amendable with treatment. So they believed that there was hope for this guy. They thought this guy could change with a bit of treatment. Spoiler alert, he can't. He will get worse. Now, after Bonin's initial release, he would brutally beat and rape a 14-year-old hitchhiker by the name of David McVicker. And this took place around September of 1975. Now, he strangled this young 14-year-old boy with his own t-shirt whilst using a tire iron to tighten the t-shirt around his neck. Now, David McVicker, he begged and pleaded for his life, and when he'd done this, Bonin stopped immediately. He even apologised to David McVicker and drove him home. Now, of course, the boy informed his mother of what had just happened to him, and she called the police right away. And then on October the 11th, 1975, Bonin was arrested for 2 different assaults. Now, when he was arrested, he told the police, "Next time, there will not be any witnesses." He's told the police that he will murder in the future. So lock him up for life. But of course, they don't. And he will be released again. So Bonin somehow was released from prison in 1979, and he's basically got away with all these crimes he's committed. You know, he's faced a couple of years imprisonment, but really nothing that tells him, damn it, I can't get away with doing this. He truly believes that he can get away with anything now. So his inflated ego and his arrogance led him to believe that he should further escalate his violent and horrific crimes, and he decided that now was the time that he would start to murder his teenage victims. Now, as we know, with these cases that we cover on here, right, somehow evil finds a way of meeting evil. It just happens, right? Usually it's maybe one person, 2 people most. However, Bonin was able to find 4 like-minded individuals who would accompany him and become accomplices to these murders. We've got Vernon Butts, who respectfully, first of all, change your name. We then have Gregory Miley and William Pugh, and very lastly, James Monroe. Now, Vernon Butts in particular, he is believed or suspected to have assisted on at least 9 of the murders committed by William Bonin. Now, what I found absolutely crazy when I was researching this case was the fact that William Pugh was almost a victim of William Bonin. They had been seen leaving a party together because William Bonin had offered Pugh a lift home, to which he accepted, and William Bonin had asked Pugh to have sex with him. After this, Pugh had tried to exit the vehicle. William Bonin confessed to Pugh once he got him back in the vehicle that he loved to abduct, restrain, torture and rape young teenage boys, and he also described to William Pugh how to get away with murder. Now, Bonin, he actually refrained from sexually assaulting or murdering William Pugh only because he was seen leaving a party with William Pugh, so people would know that he was the last person with him, and with his record, you know, he might have got locked up. Now, believe it or not, but William Pugh continued to associate himself with William Bonin, and even worse than that, he accompanied William Bonin on the abduction of 15-year-old Harry Todd Turner. Now, this took place on March the 25th, and Bonin had, of course, abducted, bound and sodomised Harry. And he actually bit into young Harry's penis until it tore and bled. He had then ordered William Pugh to brutally beat up this young boy before Bonin himself strangled the young boy to death. Now, Bonin's victims were usually young schoolboys or hitchhikers or prostitutes. They were usually either Caucasian or Latino. They were slender and pale, and most of them would have longish hair. Now, he would lure or force these young boys into his Ford Econoline, is that how you say it? Van. He would then overpower them and bound them with either like wire, cord or handcuffs. He would then brutally beat, torture and rape his victims before strangling them to death. Now, inside William Bonin's van, he had actually removed the door handles from the passenger side door and also the rear doors, and in the vehicle he kept ligatures, knives, pliers, wire coat hangers, and also other instruments that he would use to both restrain and torture his victims. Like, I can't even imagine the torture that these victims endured before being murdered by him. Now, Marcus Grabs, he was a 17-year-old German exchange student who was last seen hitchhiking across the Pacific Coast Highway on August the 5th. And devastatingly, his naked body would be found just a couple of days later. His body was found in the Malibu Canyon and he had been stabbed up to 80 times. And there was also a nylon rope found around his neck. And then the mutilated body of 15-year-old Donald Hayden from Hollywood would be found just thrown away in a dumpster. His naked body found mutilated in a dumpster. It's just so horrible. His throat had been slashed, he had been visibly tortured and brutally raped. And 17-year-old David Murillo, he would also meet the same fate. He disappeared on September the 9th whilst he was on his way to the movies. 3 days later, his body was found and he had been sodomised and mutilated. In March of 1980, a young boy who was just 12 years old, by the name of James McCabe, he was waiting on a bus to take him to Disneyland when he was abducted by Bonin. 12 years old, going to Disneyland. Like, just let that sink in. Like, these are children. Like, children who are just excited about their day. They're going to Disneyland for goodness sake, and then their life is just going to be snuffed out from underneath them. It's just... Now, this young boy, he had been bludgeoned and strangled and just threw away into the trash. And it is worth saying to you guys as well that most of Bonin's victims were young children. Now, the majority of Bonin's victims, they had been sexually assaulted and strangled with their own t-shirt, with the killer, Bonin, using a tire iron to tighten up the t-shirts around their neck to strangle them to death. Devastatingly, Bonin's body count would only continue to rise, and he said that he would spend most Fridays and Saturdays out cruising for young boys to rape and murder. And he said that Sundays were reserved for his girlfriend, so he could spend some quality time with his girlfriend. Like, are you serious? Now, Bonin had said when he found his 4 accomplices, he felt like he had finally found social acceptance. Good for you, hun. good for you. He believed that he had found like-minded people who had the same interests and hobbies as him, and that he finally had a strong group of friends. Now, what Bonin could not predict was that one of these dear friends and great accomplices would actually be the reason for his downfall. So, William Pugh, remember him? The one that was nearly a victim, then became an accomplice? He was arrested for auto theft. Now, on May the 28th, he had heard details come through regarding these ongoing murders, and he decided to confide in his counsellor that he had a suspicion of, who might be committing these murders. Now, the next day, the LAPD Sergeant John St. John, which, cool name, John St. John, strong name, that's a sergeant, had conducted an extensive interview with William Pugh. Now, William Pugh, he did not admit to accompanying this killer on one of his kills. However, the information that he had provided to John St. John had led him to believe that William Bonin may very well be the murderer that they're looking for. So the sergeant in homicide, John St. John, he carried out an extensive search into the history of William Bonin, which of course revealed his extensive criminal record, which involved sexual crimes against children. Now, when they uncovered this, he thought, this is our man, let's get some surveillance on him. Now, on June the 11th, 1980, William Bonin, unknowingly being surveilled, had set out in his van to try and find a young boy. So he had offered a lift to 5 young boys, one of which accepted. Now, police, they caught Bonin in the act of brutally sodomising a 15-year-old boy. Now, in this vehicle, they found lengths of nylon rope, they found knives, wire, cord, handcuffs, and they also found a very thick scrapbook that was newspaper clippings and cut-ins. Now, this little scrapbook that William had made himself, quite the artiste, all regarding the Freeway Killer. This was the man who was murdering and raping these young boys. So, ultimately, William Bonin's little art and craft project kind of seals the deal. Now, with what they have witnessed and what they've been able to retrieve, of course, he was arrested and charged, and he went on trial on November the 4th, 1981. Now, at this trial, he was sentenced to death. Hallelujah. And he would be the first person in Californian history to die by lethal injection. Now, on his final day, he spent some time with friends within the prison, and then he was escorted to the death watch cell. For his final meal, he ordered 2 large pepperoni and sausage pizzas. He ordered 3 pints of coffee ice cream and 3 six-packs of Coca-Cola. He was going all out on his final day. And I've got Bonin's last words here that I'm going to read out for you. So, when asked if Bonin had any last words, he said, "That I feel the death penalty is not an answer to the problems at hand. That I feel it sends the wrong message to the youth of the country. Young people act as they see other people acting, instead of as people tell them to act. And I would suggest that when a person has a thought of doing anything serious against the law, that before they did, that they should go to a quiet place and think about it seriously." Okay, moving on. Then Bonin was executed on February the 23rd, 1996. Good riddance. I was going to say see you in hell, but I'll not see him, or at least I shouldn't. I think I'm quite a good person. But yeah, he hopped right on that little elevator to hell and down he went. Now, Bonin's accomplice, Vernon Butts, he had actually hung himself and killed himself whilst awaiting for his trial, so he's in hell too. Gregory Miley, he had actually succumbed to injuries that he had suffered after a severe prison attack. Other inmates didn't really like him, so they attacked him and he died from the extensive injuries that he received. Now, James Monroe, he is currently serving a 15 years to life sentence after being convicted with second-degree murder, and William Pugh, he is actually free. He only got 6 years and he was convicted of manslaughter, but he was released after 4 years. crazy. Now, because in this case there is such an extensive list of victims, I haven't been able to mention them all throughout this video, so I am going to take a moment just now to go through the names of the victims who met their fate through William Bonin and his disgusting accomplices. Where I can find photos of each victim, I will insert them, but if there's not a photo on the screen, it's because I've not been able to find them. So if we can all just take a moment and remember the victims who lost their lives. Frank Dennis Fox, Ronald Craig Gatlin, Donald Ray Hayden, Thomas Glenn Lundgren, David Lewis Murillo, Mark Dwayne Shelton, Stephen J. Wells, Marcus Alexander Grabs, Robert Christopher Wirostik, Kern County John Doe, John Frederick Kilpatrick, Michael Francis MacDonald, Charles Dempster Miranda, James Michael McCabe, Glenn Norman Barker, Russell Dwayne Rue, Harry Todd Turner, Stephen John Wood, Darren Lee Kendrick, Lawrence Eugene Sharp, and Sean Page King. These are all victims of William Bonin, and these boys horrifically had their lives ended far too early. This should never have been the case, and my heart goes out to them, to their families. I pray for them all, and I just know that they are so loved and missed. But my angels, that is the end of another true crime and makeup episode. I know, another heavy case, but I always say these things need to be discussed, and we need to remember these victims for who they were and not how they died, and we need to remember the victims' names rather than the killers' names. If you enjoy true crime and makeup, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Put the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload, which is every Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 British Standard Time. If you're interested in anything that I've used on my face today, it will all be listed and linked in the description below. Down below you will also find my social media handles, my Instagram and my TikTok. I've been more active on Instagram since I've been on holiday. I've had like loads of pics that I need to offload, so make sure you give me a follow over there. Don't forget that you can leave your case suggestions down below in the comments, or you can send them to my email, which is also listed in the description below for you. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't be a bad person, be a good person, look out for each other, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!